I got a solution. But what's the problem? Don't worry about it. God bless and rest in peace, James Earl Jones. Field of dreams don't work in startup world, right? If I build it, they will come. No, they won't. Ain't nobody want that crap. That's what you thought was cool, but that doesn't mean the community, doesn't mean your customers are going to do it. Yes. And so with startups, I'm telling y'all right now, I'm going to look right in the camera. What problem are you solving? Because if you can figure out what problem you're solving, you figure out how to get paid. Drop that one.
Yeah, man. That's hashtag facts,
Hello.
right?
Hello.
And it's so important.
Ever wonder what it takes to unlock true Black innovation and wealth creation? You're in the right place.
This is From Chains to Links, where the brightest Black minds, entrepreneurs, academics, creatives, and futurists reimagine what it means to build generational wealth and a thriving Black community.
We're not just talking about change, we're building it. Stick around because this conversation is about to spark something different.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to From Chains to Links. I am Kelly Burton, your co-host, and I am here with the amazing Ifeoma Ike. Hey, Iffy.
Hey.
How are you, my friend?
I'm good.
So today we going to go deep.
I'm glad because I
around.
don't know if I know anything about this conversation, so this is great.
This is great. Around deep tech and emerging technology. And we are here with Tyrome Smith. Welcome.
Hi, how are you all?
How are you?
Great, how are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm ready to talk.
So this is a brother that I met a couple months ago, and we literally locked down the hallway for about an hour.
Yes, we did.
And to the point where they're like, y'all need to get out now. And we were like, oh, yeah, but we're still talking, though. So this gives us an opportunity to continue the conversation. So, Ty, introduce yourself to the good people.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Tyrome with an M, but you just call me Ty Smith. I am a executive coach for startups. I work with people who are doing innovation, from systematic innovation, as large as working with historically with one of the federal agencies, all the way down to people who are trying to build products. I'm especially interested in this topic because of the historically Black college community. I am a graduate of on a master's degree from Howard University, but I have one who's at A&T right now, and we're trying to make sure that community comes along in this emerging tech space.
Amazing. So often it's really hard for us to even keep pace with emerging technology because there's so much coming online all of the time. What are you especially excited about?
It's going to sound cliche at this point, but artificial intelligence, but not just artificial intelligence, because AI is a tool. I'm 57 years old. My dad, 50 years ago, tried to teach me how to use a slide rule. I still don't know how to use it. I was a chemistry major in undergrad. I didn't get a chemistry degree. But I had this computer that I would be able to do some kind of crazy notation, and I really couldn't figure it out. And then computers came along. So I had Apple II. My parents bought me an Apple II when I was in high school. And then the internet. And now we have the World Wide Web and Web 2 and now Web 3 and now AI. It is a tool. The problem is, I think that we overthink the tool and underthink the value. Overthink the tool and underthink the value. And so the emerging technology around AI, the emerging technology around something called generative AI, which is the more smarter one, is the one that we need to be excited about. We need to understand what underlies it in terms of innovation, what underlies it in terms of value. And so I'm excited about that.
So at Black Innovation Alliance, we are committed to being an AI-powered organization. We are leaning in to the power of AI, especially when it comes to productivity. A lot of the conversation when it comes to AI in our community is around bias, which doesn't give us the spaciousness. There's not equal part conversation about how Black folks can really onboard onto these AI tools in order to obtain a competitive advantage. So can you talk a little bit about that? Where's the opportunity? Because you talked about not leaning into the value.
Yeah, so I sit on a national board with a guy from one of the leading cybersecurity companies in the world. And he just wrote an article and says there's 4 things that are part of AI: data, energy, algorithms, and thinking, or problem creation, problem curation. And I think that what we end up with is if we could think less about all the models, but think about how we engage with it in terms of the thinking that goes into it. The AI is fine, but what it doesn't have is a way to, because it's dumb. right? It's flashy lights and silicon chips and electrons that go back and forth. But if we are able to think and involve Black folk in that space where we say, so what kind of problems are we really trying to solve? And inquiry and task the AI to really engage where we are, that's where it's I think the ball is. You talked about bias. The reason why everything I can find out and learn is the reason why it is as biased as it is because it doesn't have the training data. It doesn't have the data to go in to say, as you examine this thing, please consider this set of information. And if we don't get Black folk involved in setting the conditions to engage the data, to engage the algorithms, now don't fuss when you can't show up. You got to be, like old school EPMD song. It's like Lotto. You got to be in it to win it, right? Because if you're not in it, you can't win it. You can't be a part of that.
Yes. So this is I'm feeling a little bit of guilt because even with ChatGPT, there's a setting where you can turn it off and says, do you want it to learn from your responses? And I'm like, no.
Why?
Because with us, oftentimes there's this privacy thing. Like, I don't want AI up in my business because then they're going to use it in order to extract from me. And I think that this is something that is kind of mainstreamed within the Black community. It's just it's a both and. So how do we wrestle with that?
It's historic, isn't it?
Yes.
So you got to understand, it's like Sankofa bird. You got to understand from what you came. And so if you look at things like Tuskegee, if you look at other things, post-Reconstruction environments where Black folks took control of their lives and the systems at large literally decapitated them, right? Literally and physically, emotionally decapitated them. So if I put myself out there, am I going to get run over by the things that I'm contributing? And so it is a both-and condition. It is not an either-or. And so how do we set the conditions by owning the story, right? To say that, yes, I'm going to learn, but I'm going to own what comes out of this. I got to own it differently. And so one of the things that I like about AI, right, and the possibilities for engaging the community economically, is that you don't need infrastructure to do AI. Infrastructure is already there. You need people who can think, right? You need people who can engage with the technology. And so you talk about what's the next emergent, and that's one of the reasons I don't need to build a building to do artificial intelligence. What I need to understand is who is building the building. How do I engage with them? So we know that the president, this administration, Biden administration, Inflation Reduction Act, CHIPS Act, all of those things. There's $53 billion in the CHIPS and Science Act. The board that I sit on helps to kind of do the strategy around that. $40 billion of it is already taken care of. $13 billion of that right now is set aside for science, NSF, National Science Foundation, DOE, Department of Energy, other places. We need to be in the game. We need to be having those conversations with those agencies and saying, hey, listen, you will not forget. You don't have a choice to engage us, right? Because you need to be in it. And so if we are really focused on how do I take this training data, right? Do I turn it off? Well, you can maybe create your own. I know of two people who are creating AI businesses, literal businesses. Latimer AI, John Passmore, and there's a young woman out of I talked to her this morning. Anastasia Jackson's doing something with AI to help students over at Howard University. Amazing technologies, but they're owning the tech. They're not engaging the tech as an outsider. Don't do that.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. So at Black Innovation Alliance, we have launched 2 iterations of the BLADE report. BLADE stands for Black Liberation and the Digital Economy. As far as we know, it's the very first study on digital entrepreneurship. And we mapped digital entrepreneurship, which essentially is all the ways that folks are making money online. Right. So we talked about your son before we started, and there are many young people that are active gamers. So we wanted to look at things like gaming, esports, e-commerce, and there were so many powerful insights that came out of that study. One being that these businesses tend to be more sustainable and more likely to be profitable compared to more traditional businesses. So we see the digital entrepreneurship as a way for Black folks to kind of get in on the front end. How can we start talking about things before the market is taken off?
Well, I like that. I'm one of the entrepreneurs in residence, adjunct faculty member at Bowie State University. Love my students. brilliant kids. But if I see another hair care, skin care, it just drives me nuts because the margins on that stuff are so skinny. They're so thin. But what can you do in the digital environment? Build once, multiple uses, right? It's not infinitely scalable, but if you're smart about it, the scalability, the X on it is 10, 15, 20, 25X on one engagement versus, I build the next hard product, consumer good. I got to figure it out, and I'm competing against everybody else.
So unpack that a little bit as if I'm 10 years old. So how do I make money online exponentially?
So let's just go with gaming real quick, because that's the one my 21-year-old is out there trying to crush it, right? He will say, and we didn't know this, by the way, he started streaming at 11. I'm like, wait a minute, how'd you, boy, you didn't tell us you were streaming? Well, I can't tell you everything. Now he's 21. So he's now been in this game for 10 years. If you are 10, you can go in and create content, right? Content creation is infinitely scalable, right? You can continue to scale your content because it's a build once, use many times. And so if I'm 10 years old, teaching our kids, having ways, and there is a organization out there that's helping convert consumers to producers. Consumers to producers, particularly around, we're going to go with gaming right now, convert them so they understand how to create the game. National Science Foundation just put out an RFP to teach underrepresented communities about science, technology, engineering, and math, otherwise known as STEM, utilizing gaming. K through 12, not 16 plus. K through 12, that's where they're starting right now. So they have these tools that they can do. If you can take that, yes, learn the tech, but learn business. I think Black Innovation Alliance, what y'all should be doing is like, great, let's take that, and what does that mean for value creation? How do you create value out of your things, your production? My grandparents were from Seneca, South Carolina. They came north in 1940 something, right? My grandfather had a third grade education. I think my grandmother had a sixth grade education. Smartest people that you could find, right? They knew how to build things. My grandfather did not have an education, a formal education past third, fourth grade, but he could build stuff. They knew how to take material, raw material, and make it real, make it something that was tangible. The digital economy is the same. The kids don't have to worry about, some kids have to worry about, depending on the communities, they have to worry about the basic Maslow hierarchy needs, right? But most of those kids that have access to the computers or a smartphone, they could teach them how to convert that thing into something tangible that now has reverberations. I think that what you all are doing, some of the work the National Science Foundation, the HBCU communities that we're involved with, some of the other organizations are out there teaching them how to take this seemingly dumb tool and convert it into product and services. My kid wants to do something pretty imaginative. Like, what would happen? So I think this is design thinking, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to ask what if questions.
Yes.
What if we did something different with this? What if I could create a system, I could play all day long, or I could create something that's out there where I could convert my time to cash, that I could then go and do something out there. Elon does it. The Google guys did it, one of which actually went to high school not far from where we're taping this now, right? How did we convert that? And I think that if we can get those kids to really start to rethink the world in which they're engaging and create value, now you can start as young as, 8, 7 years old. Can folk do it?
Can I build on top of that?
Well, please do.
I think that a lot of our families, a lot of us exist in like multi-generational homes. And by multi-generation, that also means different experiences and exposure to this whole thing around digital economy. We still have these traditional, you've got to be a doctor, lawyer, certain professions that still lead in how we not only get exposed to these tools, but how we also get exposed to them beyond just helping to fulfill a book report. So to build on the riff that you raised, I would say that we need to have a dual education outreach with the adults that are connected to these young people. I will say, is coming from an immigrant community. Now, it's interesting. My dad was an engineer, so I went through the 11011 design thinking very early. So even though I didn't come out as an engineer, the way I think is still very much connected to that. But the concept of like gaming was seen as a waste of time or a hobby. And so I think what you're proposing is culturally, as a people, something separate from just the tool, but something about how the evolution of where we're at is not only economically smart, but also culturally. It is not, you are not unintelligent by connecting with these tools in this way. Just wanted to add on to that.
I love it.
And I see your pin there. So shout out to all the people that are in these.
Alpha Fraternity
I mean, I was not going to say the name of the organization. But I also want to say that in many ways, a lot of the money and the efforts get poured into these spaces that are still both connected socially, but also traditional in their thinking around this. So what do we need to do to also evolve from an organizing standpoint in the spaces that have the most resources within our community?
So I love this. You went there, and I'm going to add to it around
Please.
What does it look like to be educated and to be brilliant, and to make a digital economy worth it. What I'm doing. So I'm going to go to Alpha Phi Alpha says go to high school, go to college. Cool, but not every kid's going to go to college, nor needs to. If you look at and any parents who are listening to this, take a look at the job requirements that are going on right now in the digital economy. Not a whole lot of them say you need to have a high school diploma. Have to have a college degree. You need to have lots of training, lots of smarts. So they're hiring people who can think. Our kids can think, bar none. They can think. They're creative. But if you keep telling them that you have to think like this in a classroom with the rows that are like this that go across, and you have parents that say, "What does my kid need to get an A?" My wife teaches 8th grade math, right? What does my kid need to get an A? Ma'am, can your kid think? I'm teaching kids how to think. I'm not teaching kids how to pass a test, right? And so I think that to unpack that for the high school versus career, right? The high school that my kids went to, one of the best high schools in the DMV. The DMV is District of Columbia, Maryland, in Northern Virginia. We started having those kids that we started putting those kids towards, maybe you need to be career ready. What does that look like? In terms of gaming, do you know how much gaming is worth?
Wild.
It's a crazy number. It is worth more than television and movies combined per year. It's a tens of billions of dollar industry. So when our kids start gaming, you're like, seriously, why are you in the basement? No. He is now literally in 3 accelerators at the same time. 3 business accelerators, one of which is So Ambitious through Pharrell Williams' Black Ambition, right? That's one of the 3 that he's in, right? And so they're recognizing that this space, how do we develop a business model? And I think that if you wanted the Black Innovation Alliance, you start talking about business models, not business plans. Because who would have thought that COVID would have come around? What was the business plan for COVID? You can take a business model and iterate around. It's like, okay, well, we expect that, but this now opens an opportunity. And so we need to take those innovative energies that our kids have, that we teach out of them, and reintroduce it, right?
So talk a little bit, because you work with a lot of startups.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of being an entrepreneur is not knowing what you don't know. So if there's one piece of advice that you just have on loop because it's such a common theme with your entrepreneurs, what would it be?
All right. So I have a podcast. I'm not going to pitch it, but
go for it.
It's called What Pays. You can find it up on YouTube. What Pays. And the reason is, if you can figure out what problem you are solving, you can figure out what pays. Get it? Right? Every startup, like, what problem are you solving? Well, I'm doing. That's not a problem. That's a symptom. Understand the problem, the core problem. And the Deming model is 5 whys. I want you to do 12. I want you to do 15, because the thing that you think is a problem ain't a problem.
The Deming
You got
model.
to unpack it.
Go deeper.
So part of the training, I've developed some curriculum around this innovation called Lean Startup, right? that one of the things that you try to unpack is what problem is that you come in that you think you're solving on behalf of somebody in the community, some potential customer. Because engineers got one, you grew up with one. I got a solution, but what's the problem? Don't worry about it. God bless and rest in peace, James Earl Jones. Field of dreams don't work in startup world, right? If I build it, they will come. No, they won't. Ain't nobody want that crap. That's what you thought was cool, but that doesn't mean the community, doesn't mean your customers are going to do it. Yes. And so with startups, I'm telling y'all right now, I'm going to look right in the camera, what problem are you solving? Because if you can figure out what problem you're solving, you figure out how to get paid. Drop that one.
Damn, man, that's hashtag facts,
Hello.
Right?
Hello.
And it's so important, especially for us, because we ain't got the time. And we don't get to fail forward, right?
Yes. I have, there was a workshop that I was on, and I heard somebody say, black folks know how to do more with less. And I'm like, stop that. Stop that. Well, we need to know how to do more with more. We need to demand more, right? You need to demand more. You give them that opportunity. In terms of startups and getting investments, why is it that the white guys can have just a half an idea on a piece of paper and get $250,000 in startup, right, in seed capital? It makes no sense. No. And so what we're trying to do, I did some training through the Black VC and BVI, and what we're trying to do is create a cadre of folks who can ask a different set of questions. I actually sat on a couple of investor meetings, and I heard black investors, talking about the startup community and what we can do to black investors, literally say all the right things for all the wrong reasons. Have you done your customer discovery? But they never looked at the investor. The question that I heard was not like, so why are you still around? And I do invest in you. You'll invest in somebody that's outside of the community that is, they went to Princeton or Stanford or Harvard or whatever. That's cool. But what about the person who just has an idea? I met an investor out of Baltimore, Mac McKeever. Mac said his story was, I'm an investor now because I met a sister who had a great idea, and the only way that she could make sure that business stood was to literally give blood. Literally give blood. Not blood, sweat, and tears, metaphorical, that most people say, but to literally sit down, get a needle in her arm to give blood so she can maintain her business. That's wrong.
Yeah.
That's wrong. And I think from the standpoint of making sure that those kids who are out there and have this idea, that we need to be able to invest in their brilliance, right? Their imagination. Talking about, we don't have time to fail forward. I think that one of the problems is that we don't have the audacity of imagination, right? My grandparents, born in 1923, my grandmother told a story about her grandmother combing her hair, had this really long hair, being the child of the master down wherever they were in Oconee County, South Carolina. So now I am, by the time 1970, I was two and a half generations out of slavery. I remember laying on my grandparents' floor watching the Apollo moonshots. The audacity to go from the Wright brothers 60 years earlier, now shooting a rocket to the moon. The audacity of black folks to go in and say, we don't have anything, and to establish something like Tulsa, Oklahoma. The audacity of imagination. I think that the gift that we could give back in terms of community is create a space for the audacity of imagination, because then if you can do that, then you have the space to fail, but to learn even faster.
I love that. And we live in a society where 96% of the risk capital goes to white men. 96%. Women get 2, black folks get less than 1, and other people of color get 1%. So yes, that sounds good, but when it really comes to the capital that is necessary to enable those dreams to take flight, we got none. And it kind of doubles back to the piece around, we have to do less with more. It would be nice to not have to do less with more, but we ain't getting none.
I understand. So, and to your point, so the guy who WeWorks, blew up WeWorks, and then went back and got another $325 million to go buy some property, of which the 6 he bought, the one in Nashville, is about to go go belly up. And so what does it mean? I think that what you're speaking to has nothing to do with money, because it is anti-capital. Right? That you would invest in people that you have data that says that when you invest in them, you get a big return. That has nothing to do with capitalism. That has everything to do with culture.
That's right.
And the risk of what it means to be black and brown in America and have people invest in you.
High risk.
Right. And even black folks invest in each other. So what does that say about our cultural space? And so innovation for me is not just about the next best thing for customer. Innovation for me is a cultural innovation.
So you want to tee up that question about?
Sure. So I think this goes there.
Sorry.
No. I think I'm silent because I think for me, my brain just moves into like problem solving. Like, who do we need to organize and the quickest and in mass? So I appreciate a lot of what you were saying about this. Much of what has come up for me as you were talking was like, you embody an ownership of innovation. And we are moving in this space of owning our birthright to innovate, right? So when you hear the term right to innovate, what comes up to you? What comes up in your mind? And then also, if you think about, and I think you've already mentioned a lot of gems, but if you think about for the right to innovate to be real, X, Y, and Z needs to exist, right? So like what comes up to your mind, but also the evidence of that. What would it look like for it to be real and to exist?
Right to innovate. My grandmother told me, "Hey, you ever see those columns and like the steel work that in the plantations? Them people didn't have education. Oh, and by the way, they were built by slaves, enslaved people. So she said, what's in your head they can't steal. They can steal everything else. What's in your head you can't steal." Yes, ma'am, I got that one. And so I think the right to innovate post the enslavement period all the way up through 1921 and a little beyond, we need to go back to that. We know how to do this. We know how to do this. We know how to build systems of support, systems of benefit, all the way back to 1789. I went and traced it a little bit. Richard Allen in the Free Africa Society. We knew how to do this. We know how to support one another. And yet, our most innovative colleague of mine said that one of the things, we own basically two things in black communities, three, funeral parlors and churches. And funeral parlors, churches, and our academic institutions, universities, right? But yet, we behave as if our behavior at our academic, I'm not going to put it on the other first two, but our academic institutions, we behave in ways in which I have to look out for self. But yet we have all these brilliant babies out there, these brilliant black babies that are out there doing their thing. What would it look like to have a coalition where we could find space for investment? We could find space for advancing our ideas. We could find space for those students to be that brilliant. It's happening now. Clark Atlanta University had 42,000 applications. They had more applications than University of Georgia for 1,400 spots. Their GPA was 3.71. How do we support that to make not just for Clark Atlanta, but for the AUC or for the southern part of the United States where HBCUs are? Because that's where it's going to happen. With this last, with the decisions came out from the Supreme Court, kids are going, no, you don't want me to, it's cool. It's cool. MIT saw a 15% drop in their diverse applications because they're like, what? I want kids, what I'm trying to do is help build systems where kids go, I didn't get into A&T, I guess I have to go to Stanford. Can you imagine that? And what would that mean in terms of innovation and investment? Because you get the best and brightest going to schools that don't normally get. Forbes magazine did an investigation in 2022 around the times where they were calling these bombings. And they looked at underfunding of institutions. They just looked at land grants. The top one that just got completely underfunded was A&T. From 1987 to 2020 was underfunded by $3.8 billion from 1987 to 2020. Yet, if you looked at the economic impact associated with North Carolina State and them, it was about the same. $2.3 billion in economic impact.
Wow.
How do we create spaces so an A&T, Winston-Salem, Johnson C. Smith, NCC, you all come together and we create an economic engine? That's where I think you all, Black Innovation Alliance, could come in, help support that.
Hey now.
Love it.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Ty. Gems on gems on gems.
You're welcome.
And thanks for all you do to really advance this conversation within the spaces that matter. Really grateful for your service.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us for another episode of From Chains to Links, where we are taking the time to unpack this conversation on what it means to have the right to innovate. Join us next time. We're going to continue to go deep. We appreciate you. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for riding with us on today's journey. If this episode hit home, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend.
Visit FromChainsToLinks.com for more content and make sure to subscribe on our YouTube.
Follow us on Instagram at @BuildWithBIA, and let's keep this movement growing.
The road to true Black prosperity is built together, and we need you to do it.